need to be.
Okay.
Hello, welcome to Jewish Museum Milwaukee Museum Moments. My name is Ellie Gettinger. I'm the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and each week we try to bring you some sort of sense of a story in the community, something from our local history, or something bigger. And this week is a little bit of all three of those things. Today, we are joined by Rabbi Dena Feingold, who was the first female rabbi from the state of Wisconsin, ordained from the state of Wisconsin. She's the rabbi at Beth Hillel Temple. And we asked Rabbi Feingold to join us because this is beginning a Jubilee year. We're a little bit early on our celebration here, but we're just going to be the first people who are celebrating, as opposed to everybody else who next year is talking about it's the 50th anniversary of women being ordained in Judaism. We're at 49, so it's 7 times 7. It's a big year. So Rabbi Feingold, as we're launching this year, I wanted to talk to you about kind of what drove you to start with to consider the rabbinate, and what were the kinds of motivations that led you there, especially as a Jewish woman growing up in a small town or a medium-sized city in Wisconsin, Janesville.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak in this format, and also to say that you're in good company and beginning to mark the 50th anniversary of the ordination of Sally Priesand, because I will be attending, starting Sunday, the biennial conference of the Women's Rabbinic Network, and our theme is Journey to 50. So we're starting to celebrate as well. So yes, I grew up in Janesville, Wisconsin, where there's no synagogue, no rabbi, no religious school. We affiliated with Beth Hillel Temple in Madison, Reformed congregation in Madison. But we were very involved in Jewish life as a family. There was holiday celebrations always happened in our home, and all 4 of us Feingold children were confirmed, went through all kindergarten through confirmation at Bethel in Madison. My parents drove there every Sunday for 25 years to accomplish that for all 4 of us.
How far was that drive?
40 miles. And at the beginning, there still wasn't an interstate. That came along partway through. We had a real strong sense that Judaism was central to our lives and something very precious. And I think we all grew up with a sense that Judaism was to be cherished and appreciated. So, that part, loving Judaism and being active in the Jewish community, Jewish youth group. I was very involved in BBYO, BBG as a teen. That all seems to fit into wanting to become active as a professional person in the Jewish community, I guess, but there was no such thing as a female rabbi when I was growing up. So my role models were my own Rabbi Swarzensky of Beth El in Madison, and also an uncle, Rabbi Louis Binstock of Temple Sholom in Chicago, my mother's only sibling, was a Reform rabbi. And he was very much a revered and admired and respected person in our family. So I think the role of rabbi was something that was, a profession or a life to be admired. And it never occurred to me when I was growing up that I could be a rabbi, because there weren't any female rabbis. But I graduated high school in 1973, and the first woman was ordained. Sally Priesand was ordained in 1972. And so then it was something out there as a possibility. And I never could, on those career days they had in high school where you went around.
Right.
Instead of your classes, you went to different careers to see which one you might like. I never found one that seemed right for me. And when I heard that there was a female rabbi, I don't think I immediately thought that's what I want to do. But as I went to school in Madison, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I found that for all of my electives, I was taking something related to Judaism. I was taking Hebrew or Yiddish literature and translation, or Mideast history, or European Jewish history. And I realized that this was really the academic pursuit that I loved the most. And so somewhere in that freshman year of college, I thought, well, that could be a career for me. I could make a career out of learning about Judaism and teaching it by being a rabbi.
That speaks so powerfully to what representation and modeling does, that even just having this one person out there in the universe that can change that whole sense of, instead of saying, wait, I'm passionate about Jewish learning, I should be a teacher. Wait, I'm passionate about Jewish learning, maybe I could be a rabbi. That is such a pivot.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And I didn't immediately, jump to that. It was something I was kind of mulling over. And then I spent the summer between freshman and sophomore year at a Jewish camp for the first time. I'd always been a summer camp person, but not at Jewish camps. And I really enjoyed being immersed in that environment. And I met someone at camp who also said that he wanted to apply to rabbinical school. And then I was sort of pushed away the idea. I pushed away the idea in my head because I saw how well versed he was. He was the song leader at camp. He led all the services, and I wasn't able to do any of that. I don't think I knew more than one or two of the Hebrew songs that they sang at camp when I arrived. So I thought, oh, what was I thinking? But the idea kept coming back to me, and so I sent off a letter to the Hebrew Union College, the Reform Rabbinical School, to ask what they required in terms of background. And at the time, they said they didn't require even any Hebrew background or a degree in Judaica or whatever. They said we want well-rounded people. So I decided I would apply, and I had, by the time I graduated, I'd taken a lot of Hebrew at the University of Wisconsin. And in fact, I had an independent major in Jewish studies that I had created because they didn't have a Jewish studies department at the time. So I did have some background knowledge, but in fact, the program didn't require it. And they would take people who didn't know an aleph from a bet and to start rabbinical school. So that's a career choice. That's how it came about.
And you started rabbinical school right after you graduated Madison? You went from Madison to Cincinnati?
Yes. No, to first year in Israel, Jerusalem.
First year in Israel. So then you really got to work out at that point.
Yeah. And then the remaining 4 years in Cincinnati.
And in going into rabbinical school in the 1970s, and we were talking about this before, there were 12 women in your class but only 4 on your campus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We were all together in Jerusalem. So it was about a third of the class, which was pretty good considering just, 10 years before there had been 1. So right. It was growing already. So I didn't feel alone. There were also education students there, not just rabbinical students. So there were good number of women in the program. But you're right. When I came back to the United States and we all dispersed to different campuses, only 4 of us ended up on the Cincinnati campus. And I think that was also the largest group of students was on the Cincinnati campus, but only 4 of us were women.
And was there any pushback institutionally as you were starting to apply for jobs or doing student leading as a rabbi, a student rabbi in pulpits? What was the kind of feeling that you would get? And I'm guessing your student pulpits were generally they're in pretty random places, all over the country.
Before I ever set foot on the campus, the college, the Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, had made a commitment that they were not going to allow congregations to say, we don't want a woman. So there's a lottery system where you would get to pick your congregation, your biweekly congregation. And you're right, they're mainly in small communities all over the country. The ones around that Cincinnati students often went to were either in the South or the Midwest. And, the college said, look, if you want a rabbi, you'll get who we send to you. You don't get to say, we don't want a woman or have any other, say about who comes. And so it's interesting because many of the smaller congregations in the country were really the first ones to have the experience of having a female lead their services as student rabbis. So mine, I went to Petoskey, Michigan for a high holiday pulpit, and Galesburg, Illinois for 2 years of biweekly pulpit, and then Ames, Iowa for 1 year.
Wow.
And yeah, and these places, some of them were great and really welcoming and excited to have a woman, and I would say most of them were. And I think I was the first woman in all of those situations. But there were always individuals who weren't, couldn't quite get, that this was a real thing, that the woman was a rabbi and not your granddaughter. And but I have to say that by and large, people were very supportive and excited that women were beginning to fill these roles.
As you were coming back, as you finished rabbinical school, and your kind of first pulpit you were assigned as in Milwaukee, yeah?
Congregation Shalom, Fox Point, Milwaukee. I was the assistant rabbi. Ron Shapiro was the senior rabbi.
Was that by design, that you knew you wanted to come back to Wisconsin, or was that
No. In fact, I assumed when I went off to rabbinical school that it was very unlikely that I would ever be back in Wisconsin, because in a given year, how many rabbinical positions are open in Wisconsin? And it just so happened that the year that I was ordained, there were actually 2 positions open in Milwaukee for assistant rabbis. I wanted to be an assistant rabbi. I wanted to have the large congregation experience and learn from a more seasoned rabbi before I went off on my own. And so I only applied for assistantships all around the country. And it just was kind of, one of those bashert things that it was really a really good fit for me, and it allowed me to come back to Wisconsin. I had never lived in Milwaukee, so that was a unique, place, is a new place for me to explore. But I never dreamed that I'd be able to come back to Wisconsin. It just sort of happened that way.
And now you forged your entire career in Wisconsin.
Yes. So at the end of my as I was entering my 3rd year and I was looking to move on, I met my husband, who was and still is an attorney in Milwaukee. And then I sort of revised my search for a new pulpit to be near Milwaukee. And that's how I ended up in Kenosha.
So as we're at the 49th year, rounding out to 50 of women in the pulpit, what do you think have been the kinds of things that women have brought to the rabbinate that otherwise maybe wouldn't have been accomplished or accepted in the same way?
I think in some ways we humanize the rabbinate. That during the era that I became a rabbi and since, people, I think, see their rabbis more as human beings and not as some godlike figure up there on the pulpit, which is sort of the image of a rabbi that I grew up with. And maybe it's just a generational thing, but I think it has partly to do with seeing women in the role, seeing women, and then more and more men as parents as well as rabbis, seeing them, deal with their children and in the synagogue setting, and trying to balance their lives between their professional and their family lives. I feel that my peers that are male, along with the female peers, we've all struggled with that and tried to, be the kind of rabbi that could also have a personal life and a family life. And I think the entry of women into the rabbinate made that possible for men and women more so than it used to be. I also think that not in my era so much, but in the succeeding generations, it's become more acceptable to work part-time for a while and then go back into the full-time rabbinate. And I think that's become possible because of the entry of women into the field. When I entered the field, I felt like I couldn't risk taking time off to raise children, that I wouldn't be taken seriously, that I needed to continue to work full-time, and I always have. But I see that in the generations behind me, that they are able to, come and go in the professional world more easily than used to be true. And that may be true in other professions as well. Beyond that, I think that women's entry into religious life, be it Jewish or otherwise, has opened up doors to women feeling, I think, more comfortable in congregational life, being able to be lay leaders in congregational life, perhaps pastoral counseling with a woman is easier for a woman to go to a female rabbi about certain issues. Not exclusively, but I think in some situations that might be true. And the whole sensitivity to, sexual harassment in the workplace and that kind of thing, which is a very live and topical issue right now. I think, women in leadership roles has allowed that issue to come to the fore in a way that it was probably hidden. It was hidden for a long, long time.
I think that all of those are true. And I think those are all, it's like a microcosm, as you said, of this kind of broader change and challenge as we see women taking more and more leadership roles, that there are all of these kinds of variables around work and life that come into play, that need to come into play, that probably always needed to come into play, but then are shown in a different light because, it's a necessity of modern life. Well, I'm excited to see what the kind of future of this looks like. And I'm excited to see how we celebrate this 50th anniversary all year long. So thank you very much for joining us for this museum moment. Thanks as always to our sponsor, Robin Cohen, for making them possible. If you've liked this or any other museum moment, check us out online at jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. And we're open for business, so please come visit us as well. Thank you so much, Dena.
Thank you for having me, and I'll look for those other moments and see what I can learn from the museum.
Have a great day.
Thank you.